Hello, my friends. John LaRuffa here with another straight up solo. And in this episode, we're going to talk about the top 10 expansions from a solo standpoint that I think really enhance some of my favorite games. Now, I will say this, there may be other games that aren't on this list that have awesome solo expansions or expansions that work for them, but I really wanted to focus on ones of games I really like and also ones that had an expansion that really changed the game. So I'll mention some that aren't on my list at the end here that are kind of like I throw these in, but these I think are really important. If you are a solo gamer and you like these games and lists, these expansions really help. So they're also not in a necessarily particular order. I'm not going to say number one. I'm just going to give you 10 of them, okay? Because it's tough to say which one's the best or whatever. I spent a little bit too much time thinking about that. I said, you know what? We're just going to go in no particular order, all right? So the first one I want to talk about is the expansion for Tau TCU, which is the Golden Age. So Tau TCU has a pretty decent, I'd say, solo mode inside of it, but the Golden Age really helped that game be much more fun from a solo standpoint. If you like that game, what the Golden Age did was it just made the bot easier to understand, easier to control, a little bit more flexible. I thought it was one of those things like if you're going to buy that game, this is almost an essential expansion. And not all of these I think are essential, although most of them I would say are if you really like the game. But this one really pushed it to the point where I would never play solo without, and you can see it right over here, I never play solo without that expansion ever again. So that's a really good one. It's called the Golden Age. Check it out. Another one I'd like to mention is Caverna. Now, in Caverna's expansion I want to talk about specifically is the Forgotten Folk. So Caverna is a fantastic game. It makes a lot of my top 10 lists. The Forgotten Folk expansion adds seven very asymmetric different races, so to speak, with their own buildings and their own everything, rules, such and so forth. It breathes tremendous life into that game, especially from a solo standpoint, which doesn't really have a campaign. Here you can try the different types of 7 different Forgotten Folks and really change up the strategies you're trying to go for. It is just a tremendous value. If you like Caverna and you want more variety and also things that would force you to change up what you're doing, you can buy this expansion and really get it there because it really does change your focus on things. It replaces some buildings with others. So that means if you've gotten into a quote unquote building rut, this can help you get out of that and try, well, I don't have that building in this game, so now I have to figure out what I'm going to do. So Forgotten Folk, I think, is clearly worth the money. And I never have tried the other one, which is the newer one, and I can't remember the name of it. It has to do with, I think it's the goblins or orcs or whatever. Not orcs. I don't know. Trolls? That one departed so much from Caverna, and I have so much Converta content. I said, you know what? I'm happy with where I am. I will say this with the expansion. Sometimes I've had expansion regret, where it's like, oh, geez, this was a great game, and now I put the expansion in it, and it's just too much. It lost something in that, and I was worried about that with that other expansion, but not with Forgotten Folk. Okay, another fantastic one that you should check out is the Fields of Arle Tea and Trade. If you like Fields of Arle, Tea and Trade gives you even more, I would say, to enjoy. It is not an essential expansion by any means because it doesn't massively change the gameplay. It just adds more goodness to the game. And I love that game from a solo side. I love it anyway, solo or multiplayer, but Tea and Trade really opens up a whole new way to play that game and absolutely doubles, as far as I'm concerned, the value of what you get. So that is a really cool one. What really goes, not only does it give you more, but it also gives you tokens that allow you to kind of double the power or double the effectiveness of your main actions that you take. And so I think that's why that one really stands out. It's not just more buildings, it's not just more equipment you can build or whatever, but the Tea and Trade, using those specific things to, really add to your workbench level or allow you to take that workbench action again, really provides for some cool stuff. I really like that one. Okay, And speaking of ones that work, because this is the third one I'll mention for Uwe Rosenberg, is the Norwegian expansion for A Feast for Odin. Now, again, this is one that really does add a lot more of more content, but it changes things enough where I would say it really is a more elaborate expansion, because you get a whole different expansion board with different balanced actions. And I think it especially helps the solo game to give you so many different things you could try that the possibilities really become endless. It's not just like, well, I have these different cards that I can put together. No, in this one, it adds more islands. It adds more complete resources, different things. They have pigs, and it changes the whole thing and makes some strategies viable that weren't necessarily viable before. Like, for instance, I think you can do a lot more with animals in this when you put in the Norwegians expansion than if you don't. And A Feast for Odin is one of my all-time favorite games, so I think that expansion has just been a huge blessing for me, because it has really allowed me to play that game over and over and in just all sorts of different ways. I love it. All right, moving to a different designer now. I think this one was a game that was a sleeper hit for me that I didn't expect to love so much, and then I loved it, and the expansion makes it even better, and that is the Darwin's Journey Fireland expansion. I really, really appreciate what they're doing here in that one, because what they do is the normal game in Darwin's Journey is a very solid Euro, really good, and you have the movement of your boat and you have the movement of your guy exploring different things, and all that is really cool. What Fireland does is it increases that by giving you multiple boats, multiple guys, way more stuff to do in that mechanic, plus a whole additional amount of action tiles and another mechanic that adds more, you like spend your time. You can spend time to get more rewards. It really takes the game and flushes it out. Even though the game itself had a lot going for it, it makes it huge. And I would never want to play without that expansion. I like it so much. And it's such a great solo game anyway. You put that in and it makes it even better. And I think if you like Darwin's Journey, you will love Fireland. I didn't find it was overwhelming, even though it does add a lot more stuff. All of the stuff was familiar. It was just more choices in that kind of thing. And so I really like it. I definitely think it's worth you checking out. All right, another one. Great Western Trail Rails to the North. Now, there are a lot of Great Western Trails, and I'm really actually talking about the second edition, because the second edition has the solo mode to it. But if you have Great Western Trail second edition and you like it solo, I think it is highly worth your money to take a look at Rails to the North, because it takes that game and really opens up the player space. It opens up the decisions, the kinds of things you can explore, where you can focus, and it turns that game into a very, very broad game where you can go down lots of different alleys and try all sorts of different things. And it takes I really think it takes the solo experience up a whole nother notch. Now, I won't get into, I have compared which one of those Great Western Trails I like the best, and they're all really, really good. I think they all stand on their own merits. I always give the tip of the hat just slightly to New Zealand. I think that it's a combination of two things. Number one, I think it adds some of the feel of the Rails to the North into it, but it also gives you some more deck building stuff. But this is not that video about that. It's, if you have the second edition, you're wondering, should I spend the money on Rails to the North? I absolutely think you should, if you want more to do, if you want more options. It is not an essential expansion by any means. I don't think it's essential, but it definitely helps make that game more broad and allows you to do a lot of other different things. Okay, here's one that absolutely is essential. The Starry Rift for New Frontiers. The Starry Rift opens up the ability to play solo for the New Frontiers. The New Frontiers doesn't have solo. So if you like New Frontiers and you want to play it solo, you have to get this one. Now, Starry Rift, basically what it allows you to do is explore all sorts of different strategies in a puzzly style way. You aren't really playing against an opponent, so to speak, even though the opponent is, they're kind of blocking your actions a little bit, taking some things. It's really more of a puzzle because you're always the one taking the action, and then it responds to what you're doing. So it's not like it's choosing an action for you, but it is a great way to explore that game solo. if you like games like Puerto Rico or like New Frontiers, and Puerto Rico doesn't have anything official, and you really want to play it solo, that's the expansion to get. It's definitely worth it. They give you a campaign you can try out inside. They give you a lot of different goals, a lot of different setups you can attempt. I think it's really good. It's an essential expansion if you want to play solo, because you can't play solo out of the box. So the Starry Rift is definitely worth your time and effort and money if you like New Frontiers and you have it. Or if you want to play it solo, you got to pick it up. All right, changing genres completely now. Root the Clockwork expansions, and I'll say both of them. There might be even a third one. I can't remember. Just in general, the Clockwork expansion system works really well for Root if you really like Root, but don't get to play with a lot of people. Now, the one thing about the Clockwork expansions are they are a lot of work. They are. There's no doubt about it. You're basically playing at the level of, when you, I don't know if you're a fan of coin games, you have to play with these multifaceted opponents with spreadsheets and such and so forth. While I don't think they're as challenging as a coin game, you are definitely, because of the asymmetry of the rolls and the asymmetry of how that bot plays, you are doing that type of level, maybe one down of analysis in order to use that expansion. It is really good. It is really competitive. It's really well thought out, but it's also pretty involved. It is probably, in my opinion, the heaviest lift of all the expansions I've talked to you about on this list thus far, but it is worth it if you like Root and you've played the base game, but you're like, the expansion in the box just kind of, it's okay, but it's not that great. Any of the Clockwork expansions, you gotta get the first one with the base game, but if you're an expansion, then they have, with the other Woodland guys, they have a Clockwork 2, and then I think there isn't even a 3, I'm pretty sure, for the third one. But anyway, the fact of the matter is it's a very good, very competitive, very well thought out expansion that really provides some exciting and competitive bots to play against. Highly worth your money. And I would say from a solo standpoint, this would be an essential expansion to get, at least for the base game, because that maniacal cat, or whatever it's called, is just not that great, to be honest, by itself. Okay. Another one I want to talk about is Scythe, the Rise of Fenris. If you are a Scythe fan, the game comes with an automa, which is totally good. Totally works. It's competitive. It's fine. But this is one that I think, if you get the Rise of Fenris, not only does it give you a campaign to play against with unlockable story choices and things, but it really breathes some awesome life into Scythe. Scythe is a good game, but after you've played it a while, you kind of feel like you've played all that it's got. You've gone through the loop. And the loop is fun, but it's limited after a while, and it can get stale. I definitely think it can. But when you put in the Rise of Fenris, there are all sorts of different modules you can include in different combinations that really change that feel. And I think it is a really good expansion for that. Is it essential? No. If you don't play Scythe all the time and you want to play Scythe and just play it by itself, you can use the expansion inside the box and be just fine, just no problem. But if you want to take it to another level, then that Rise of Fenris is really, really good. Other expansions I'll mention that I didn't find I don't think that expansion with the flying airships was all that great. I think that was kind of a waste of money. It added bloat to the game. I didn't think it was that exciting. I regret buying that expansion. I did like the expansion that added I think it's the 6th and 7th race to the base game. That was good because those races were interesting and they were fun to play. But I think that the Rise of Fenris absolutely stands head and shoulders above the rest of them. Very, very, very worth your checking out if you're a Scythe fan and you play it solo a lot. All right, and then my final one on the list is one that is a very essential expansion, in my opinion, if you have the base game and want more out of it, and that's Everdell Mistwood. Everdell by itself is a decent game. It's not an amazing game, it's a decent game. As you add expansions, it becomes a better game, okay? Because there's more stuff to do. Not every expansion is created equal by any means. I think that's it's kind of interesting. I mean, when you put it all together, if you look at the total expense to get the Everdell system of games, it's very expensive. However, I kind of piecemealed it into my collection, so it kind of snuck up on me. But I will say this, if you want to say, well, I like Everdell, but I want to buy one and only one expansion, I plan to play solo, Mistwood is definitely there. It provides a functional automa that you can play against, it's competitive, and it provides enough content to really help kind of flush out a game that didn't need that necessarily. The base game wasn't bad. It didn't seem like it was limited. It had enough cards, but the base game's solo mode was just so-so, in my opinion. It was more of a just kind of a card turner over, and I mean, it was difficult. There's no doubt about it. It was challenging, but the Mistwood expansion provides you an automa to play against, which I think is very fun, and that's why I feel like from a solo standpoint, this one would get the essential stamp from me. All right, so those are 10 games that I think have great expansions you should check out if you like the base game, if you haven't already, or if you're looking at getting into the game, you may want to consider putting the expansion with the base game if I said it was essential. Now I'll talk about a couple other ones that I think are worth mentioning. That are good, but I didn't think they made a top 10 list, or it just didn't fit with the theme. First of all, I have a ton of the Eldritch Horror and Arkham Horror and Mansions of Madness, 2nd edition, etc. content. All those expansions are very good. They all build on that system. Awesome stuff. Take a look at those. If you like those, I think you know what you're getting. You're just getting more content, more story. Some of them actually kind of do feel a little bit essential, but I didn't want to go into that. I could make a whole video on that on my aside from this. The other one, which I think breathes an important step of life into it, is if you have the Agricola newer edition, I should say, getting a couple of decks really helps. Like if you get the A and B deck, that can really help you get more cards, especially solo, because there's only a certain amount of cards that can be played in the base game when you play solo as it is. So get a couple of decks. A and B are pretty good, and they're not too off the wall, and they have a lot of good solo cards in them. Another one that I'll talk about is the sequel to Scythe, the Expeditions. That game had an okay feel to it just in general, but it does have an essential expansion. The Gears of Corruption, I think, is an essential expansion for that if you like that game. That game does not make my top upper echelon of games, although I do enjoy it. It's going to stay in my collection. I didn't feel like it was as important as these other ones, so I didn't put it in my top 10 list. And then finally, just in general, there's a variety of games that have good expansions to them, which I think are good, but I don't think that they're essential. And so I didn't mention all those. I've played a lot of games with a lot of expansions, but they didn't make the list. And one of those I would mention would be like Viticulture. So Viticulture has an essential edition, but I had purchased the Tuscany edition a long time ago. Now it kind of comes packaged together in that essential edition. And then that box is cool too. So lots of stuff there. But either way, I really hope this was an informative video for you to take a look at these 10, to say, I think that these are worth checking out, going deeper. They don't make the game over bloated or too much. They just expand or are essential as far as I'm concerned from the solo player. So thanks so much. I'm very interested to hear if I missed some that you find that are really good and they are part of games that you've seen me review. Like, you got to check this out. Go ahead and mention it. I'd like to hear what you think. So thanks so much for watching, everybody. I really appreciate it. And whatever you do in the future, I really hope you have a fantastic time doing it. Take it easy, everybody.